excited that you can join us, some of you, again this year. This is the second year for the Envision Iowa event, but some of you might be new and wondering exactly what is this and why did we create Envision Iowa? Well, Envision Iowa is an initiative created by Business Publications Corporation to help Iowa thrive and grow. Why did we decide that there was an initiative needed? Well, we have been through some changes recently. Raise your hands, anybody? Have you been through change in the last 2 years? Okay, we can all agree on that. So while our company has for almost 40 years, yes, 40 years, next year is our anniversary, we have covered business, we've covered the cultural scene in Iowa through various publications and events. But when the pandemic and the economic downturn hit, we asked ourselves, what more can we be doing as a media company to use our platforms, to use our voice, to elevate your voices, to support Iowa's economic recovery and future economic growth. So we decided to listen. That's what we often do when we have a question about things. We conducted a number of different focus groups during 2020 with Economic and Development Chamber folks across the state. These focus groups were unbelievably valuable. We heard some very clear themes about what is needed for Iowa to advance and grow. And those themes, those of you who have been on the think tanks or with us know, are people and culture, business opportunities, and infrastructure. And from that, just sort of a germ of an idea, we created this initiative. Last year it included 3 think tanks, an in-person event, and ongoing coverage of economic development issues. And last year's initiative in our evaluations was so well received that we decided to do it again this year, focusing on the same themes that affect Iowa companies and communities. So the goal here for Envision Iowa is simply to strengthen our businesses and our communities through strategic connections, through the power of storytelling, and by amplifying the message of Iowa, which we believe will lead to more collaboration and action. So this initiative is helping us to highlight stories of the interesting, innovative, unique places and spaces and ideas happening right here in Iowa. And our goal is to elevate key economic development conversations through our statewide publication of the business record. You have an example on your table. Our statewide innovation magazine, you have examples on your table. And our statewide arts and culture focused publication, IA magazine, both in print and digital. So speaking of IA magazine, I know you can see a cover up here on stage. We are actually unveiling this magazine to you tonight. While we don't have the reveal like we do at our DSM events, you are the first to see this magazine tonight. IA was started by Connie Weimer over a decade ago, supported by Debbie Durham and IEDA, to truly be a showcase for Iowa. This annual statewide magazine tells the stories of arts and culture, food and dining, and destinations, and I could not be more excited about this year's stunning issue, lovingly created by our magazine team and supported by our sales, operation, design, and administrative teams. So you see the cover. There was a bit of a swirl when we unveiled the cover internally. Are these goats or are these lambs? And guess who won? The farm kids all called it. So these are lambs. Please do check it out if you have some time. The stories are going to make you proud to be from Iowa. And we hope that the magazine and the accompanying 2 times a month e-newsletter are not only enjoyable, but are tools that can help you to recruit and retain talent at your organizations. So please hand these out to anyone. We've got extra copies back at the office. We're happy to give you anyone who's interested in living, working, or playing in Iowa. will enjoy this. So please join me in giving a big round of applause to the magazine team and to BBC, everyone, for their wonderful work. You want to hear a little bit about what's happening in the state, let's get started on our program. So here's how this afternoon is going to work. First, Debbie Durham of IEDA and IFA is going to kick us off with a mini keynote on the economy here in Iowa, and we always love hearing from Debbie. Then we are very pleased to be introducing some new research. This emerged from last year's program. One of the biggest questions that we heard last year in Envision Iowa from our attendees was, but what do leaders really think about what is going on here with the economic outlook? What's the sentiment of other leaders? They asked us, what is working? What's not working? What are you hearing? And even more importantly, we were asked over and over, where can we get data that's comprehensive to determine how we rank against other states and what we can be doing to advance our state. So in partnership with Baton Global, a leading research and consulting firm, it's a global firm that's based right here in Des Moines, we surveyed 3,500 Iowa leaders, including many of you, to get your outlook on the Iowa economy. And you are going to be the first here today to hear the high-level results from Kavilash Chawla, who's the managing director at Baton Global. We also have a panel of statewide leaders, Chris is going to introduce in a minute, who participated in the think tanks, and they are going to be responding to the survey findings. Before we start, one of the things I want to emphasize is that many, many groups are doing amazing work to advance our state. You're going to hear from Debbie about that. We know Joe Murphy and the Iowa Business Council, various agencies, the Greater Des Moines Partnership, Economic Development, and Chambers all across our state are working diligently every day to make Iowa a strong and vibrant state. But what you'll also hear today is that we need to build on and support that work and align towards common goals and common action to move Iowa forward. And that's what we're here to discuss today. I am now very pleased to introduce Chris Konetsky, who's the group publisher of the Business Record. Chris has been involved with Envision Iowa since that fateful day that I called him and uttered those words that he both loves and dreads. I have an idea. So please welcome Chris Konetsky.
Thank you, Susanna, and thank you all for being here tonight. We, of course, couldn't be pulling this event together tonight without the support of the many sponsors that, of course, are supporting the event tonight and have supported the entire think tank series as well that we hosted this summer. In addition to our presenting sponsor, IEDA, who's been with us from the very start, I want to thank our think tank sponsor, McKee, Voorhees, and Cease, who's here tonight. Thank you for being here and helping support the think tank series, and of course the many organizations that are supporting the work that we're doing as it relates to the research that we have today. We also have 3 fantastic visionary sponsors that are helping power the event tonight, and we're going to get to hear from them a little bit today as well. Our first sponsor is the Iowa Business Council, which is an organization of CEOs and top executives from the 22 largest employers in Iowa, which serve as a catalyst to elevate Iowa's long-term economic vitality through global thought leadership, research, and advocacy. Joe Murphy is the executive director. He's got over a decade of government affairs, political advocacy, and public relations experience. He's active in the community and is on many boards, and of course, he's a father of 3, including a set of twins. So Joe, welcome. And we'll hear from what Iowa Business Council is doing.
Thanks, Chris. The twins always get a shout out. They're good for the clicks. They're good for the so they always get an applause line. But thank you all for being here today. We really appreciate everything that you are all doing in this room. It's really about coming together as community leaders, as business leaders, and confronting issues that impact our everyday lives. And I just want to say how proud we are to sponsor this event, the leadership that Business Publications Corporation has put forward in collecting a statewide cadre of influencers, of business and industry leaders, of community leaders, nonprofit leaders, is really something extraordinary and something that we should fully take advantage of. So we're really looking forward to more things to come with the research from Kavi and others at Baton Global that really sort of identify areas in which we can improve on and move forward collectively on our statewide initiative. So, as Chris mentioned, the Iowa Business Council, we're a statewide business association made up of some of the largest companies in the state of Iowa, 20 of them in total. We represent big business in the state of Iowa. And sometimes, unfortunately, big business is used as a pejorative, particularly when you're using that context through a political lens. But I'm here to tell you that big business, and I know none of you in this room need to be convinced of that, but big business in this state is a good thing. And just as an example, our members, our 20 members, just over the last year, employed more than 190,000 Iowans, had a combined payroll of more than $10 billion, had more than $3 billion in capital investment, more than $2.2 billion in research and development, more than $91 million in charitable contributions for Iowa philanthropic institutions throughout the entire state, and more than 230,000 hours of volunteer time off that our business members, our business partners, allow their employees to take to better our communities, better all 99 counties. And so when you hear things that big business isn't supporting the state, big business isn't supporting your communities, know that that is a fallacy. Everything that we're doing in this state is trying to maintain our workforce, our population, and our future innovation. So thank you all for everything that you're doing. You're a big part of that. We know that we represent just 20 companies, but we have a large presence. But so much of our activity stems through community relationships and partnerships, and you are all at the center of that. So thank you so much. We really look forward to the program tonight and appreciate everybody for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and I'll put a little plug out for your survey work that you do on a quarterly basis. Business Record, we always report on that each quarter, but a really great way for you to stay, again, to get sentiment from what's happening and what the beliefs are and what investment might be looking like, what the economic outlook looks like. So make sure you check that out as well. Our next sponsor is the Des Moines International Airport. The airport is, of course, growing, adapting, and changing to meet the evolving needs of the traveling public. The Airport Authority works to improve the quality of air service and make air travel to and from Iowa more convenient and pleasurable. You might know that they're working on a little project to try to make the airport larger. If you don't by now, I'm sure Kevin is going to talk to you about it. With us today is Kevin Foley. He's the Executive Director of the Des Moines Airport Authority. Please welcome Kevin.
Thank you, Chris. And to the Business Publication Corporation for the opportunity to speak tonight. Thank all of you for being here. It is our pleasure to be a sponsor of this event again this year. Airports are economic engines that support the economies of the areas they serve. With 64% of all of the commercial traffic in the state of Iowa, 29 nonstop destinations, 6 commercial service airlines, and 3 air cargo airlines, Des Moines International Airport is the economic engine for the state of Iowa. Des Moines passenger numbers continue to grow post-pandemic, or on the backside of the pandemic. Today, they rivaled the record-breaking 2019 pre-pandemic numbers. In response to that growth, we have airlines bringing in larger airplanes today with more seats. In post-pandemic, we once again have new airlines looking at us and interested in possibly providing service to Des Moines International Airport. Des Moines ranks 83rd in size as measured by passenger enplanements. That puts us in the top 20% of commercial service airports in the United States. In 2014, the Airport Authority launched into a plan to build a new terminal in response to that growth. And today, that vision is moving forward with the help of local, county, and state governments. 20 municipalities and local counties have committed funds to this project. To all the mayors, council members, county supervisors, and our governor, we have to say a sincere thank you for their support. That support has allowed the authority to move forward with the terminal project. The enabling projects that you see today are projects such as the entrance road reconstruction that's going on. We have an 1,100 stall garage expansion plan, and design of the terminal is underway. We still have a long way to go to complete this project and make this vision a reality. The Airport Authority is committed to securing funding to complete this project and ensure our role as an economic driver for the state continues well into the future. We're committed to designing and constructing a terminal that opens opportunities for additional air service and a terminal that elevates the passenger experience both for our residents as well as our visitors. So tonight I'll leave you with the assurance that the Moines Airport Authority is hard at work to ensure that the Moines Airport remains the transportation hub and the economic engine Iowa needs and deserves. Thank you again to the Business Publication Corporation for the opportunity and to sponsor Envision Iowa. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Our final sponsor today is the Iowa Credit Union League, which is a nonprofit trade association representing the interests of Iowa's state and federally chartered credit unions and their more than 1 million members. As you know, a credit union is a nonprofit financial cooperative that is owned and governed by its members. In addition to serving their members, credit unions provide a direct impact for the communities in which they operate and contribute over $1 billion to the state economy. With us here today from the Iowa Credit Union League is the organization's president and CEO, Murray Williams. Please give Murray a warm welcome. Murray.
Thank you, Chris, and good afternoon, everyone. I think what I'm most thankful for, Chris, is that we didn't put pictures up on the screen because I think mine was taken prior to COVID, and 3+ years ago, I think I had more hair, a smaller waistline, and I may have been wearing the same outfit today. So I'm grateful for that, so thank you very much. But anyway, it's really our honor and pleasure to be a sponsor tonight and to participate in these ongoing conversations. Iowa credit unions are proud to be part of these discussions and collectively move Iowa forward. And I think we can all agree that the vibrant communities and strong workforces that we have are critical to our state's economic future. We also know that addressing issues like affordable housing, access to child care, and helping Iowans improve their financial futures are critical to growing our Iowa communities. We also know that by working together, everyone in this room and beyond, we can effectively tackle these barriers that hinder economic opportunity and upward mobility for Iowans. And I'm proud that Iowa credit unions are uniquely positioned to help. Nearly 50% of Iowans now, over 1.4 million, are members of credit unions. Our movement contributes more than $2 billion in total economic output in our state each year. And while we are small in market share, we provide more than 30% of Iowa's total mortgage loans, with a significant focus in low-income and rural areas. And last year alone, Iowa's credit unions put more than $160 million back into Iowans' pockets through better rates and lower fees than they would have gotten from other financial institutions. Yet with all of that, we know there's a lot of work still to be done. For instance, we know that 37% of all Iowa households struggle to afford basic expenses or have enough in their emergency savings. Iowa ranks 41st in the country in socioeconomic racial disparities. And the home ownership rate for African Americans in our state is only 23% compared to 73% for white Iowans. And this also compares to 42% rate for African American home ownership nationwide. And while these challenges are sobering and daunting, they're not insurmountable. There's certainly more hard work to be done, but I'm confident that when we all work together, we can more effectively tackle these issues. So I continually see Iowa credit unions and all of your organizations asking the hard questions, the questions that Susanna was asking. How can we be better? How can we do more? How can we make an even greater impact? And that's what we're all here to do today, to grapple with these tough questions and to work together to make a difference. So Iowa's credit unions are proud to be supporters of Envision Iowa and all of their efforts. And together we look forward to providing more and greater impact for Iowans and their communities.
Well said, Murray. You hit on a number of the topics that I'm sure we're going to be exploring a little bit later tonight, and we've been exploring through the Think Tank series. All right, we're going to go ahead and get things started now. We're going to kick things off with our keynote, Debbie Durham. We thought about giving her the mic for the full hour and a half, but figured we'll get her worked in on the panel here today as well. Debbie, as you know, is the Executive Director of the Iowa Economic Development Authority and the Iowa Finance Authority, and is one of the visionary movers and shakers here in the state. She was first appointed to lead IEDA in 2011 and since has turned the agency into a successful public-private partnership, landed billion-dollar development projects, and worked tirelessly on expanding trade and investment opportunities in the state. Her roots are in Sioux City, where she was the president of the Siouxland Chamber. Her many awards, of course, are a testament to her contribution she's made and continues to make to the state. She's about a 14-time economic forecast panelist for us as well. Debbie, welcome to the stage.
Chris, and good afternoon to all. Let me begin by thanking the business record for supporting economic development and challenging, actually, each of us to envision the future of Iowa. I've left each of these conversations both challenged and inspired, so thank you for that. Well, today it feels good to be among so many friends who feel the same way I do about Iowa. We take pride in our people, in our communities, and our businesses. We put our hearts into helping them flourish, and we're always thinking about what's next. And I must say, while the nation's economic challenges continue to mount, Iowa sits in a very enviable position. We're #1 in opportunity and housing affordability, a top 10 state to live, one of the best places to start and grow a business. In fact, we've had a record number of new businesses 2 years in a row. And in just a few years, Iowa has gone from one of the least competitive states for taxes to one of the most when fully implemented. Iowa's success story, though, speaks to our collective leadership and vision. We see the future, and quite frankly, we run to it, not from it. Yes, our economy rebounded from the pandemic faster than any other state, largely due to because we kept our core industries open. But the reality is this. We've worked aggressively for some time now to diversify our economy to fuel our economic growth. For example, while Iowa is a manufacturing powerhouse, we're thinking outside the box to stay competitive amid technology revolution that is changing the landscape of this critical industry, Iowa's largest. We did the research and created the first statewide plan to adapt and maintain Iowa's reputation as a global competitive leader. And we backed that up with unprecedented investments to help manufacturers purchase cutting-edge technology they need. Over the past year alone, we spent $30 million in the Manufacturing 4.0 grants that have been awarded for projects that run from robotics to 3D printing to big data and cloud computing. I visit communities 2 to 3 days a week of all sizes and have helped celebrate more manufacturing wins than I can count. From the new headquarters of Lely and Pella, the only dairy automation company in North America that produces robotic milking machines for dairy farmers. I'm telling you, you got happy cows, you got happy milk, right? The Lifeline emergency vehicles in Sumner, which invested in robotics to replace the manual standing of ambulances before their payment. And we're also working to make the state more attractive for businesses in all of our key industry to relocate or expand here. We've provided more project-ready locations. In fact, we just announced our largest Iowa certified site, mega site in Mills County, with more in the pipeline to come. And we're leading the nation for energy generated from renewable resources. Certainly a calling card for Iowa. And like the companies we're trying to bring here, we understand sustainability is the cost of doing business today, and quite frankly, the key to attracting tomorrow's workers. And I know that in your communities, you're competing for workforce every single day. As a state, we're pulling out all the stops to tackle the ongoing shortage to attract talent in our businesses that need to grow and our communities that need to thrive. These challenges, of course, are not unique to Iowa, but again, we're in a better position than most states. The recent reorganization of our sister agency, Iowa Workforce Development, put all state workforce programs under one roof. It's helping people on the sidelines get back into the workforce with career coaching that not only connects them to great jobs, but also training to reach higher and get jobs that are more meaningful to them. And a new business engagement division is helping employers find solutions to a shortage that is anything but one size fits all. Now, this new division is a big deal. It's an entirely different way of doing business because IWD has put the right people in place to work with businesses, industry leaders who have walked in their shoes. Because when our companies are successful, our communities thrive. And when our communities thrive, it raises the profile of Iowa and attracts new businesses and residents to our state. And Iowa is making historic investments in our communities to create places where people want to live. $430 million to develop new housing, because Iowa needs 61,000 new housing units by the year 2030 to support our economic plans. More than $500 million to expand access to quality, affordable daycare for our working families. Nearly $684 million to build out broadband statewide. $100 million for water infrastructure and water quality, and $100 million for quality life and tourism attractions through Destination Iowa program. So I want to thank Governor Reynolds for making these investments. I love to think about how they'll take shape and where Iowa will be 5 years from now. Now, there's something about our quality of life that you just can't pay for, though, and that's our people. There was a meeting recently with a mix of Iowans and people from other Midwestern states. Someone asked, what makes Iowa so very unique? And every single person in the room said something about our people. Our tendency to roll out the welcome mat has earned us a label called Iowa Nice. It's a place where neighbors feel like family, where you can be anything if you're willing to dream it and work for it. And in the same meeting, someone else said, Iowa is not a place you think of visiting, but it's a place you want to stay. And we're all working on that. We're letting people know about Iowa's secret like never before through our This Is Iowa campaign, which is giving people from coast to coast a glimpse of our beautiful state. And we're moving the needle in the perceptions of Iowa. Our research shows that 20 percentage point growth in people who said they now see Iowa, first of all, they had to figure out where the hell Iowa was, but they now see Iowa as a fun, friendly, and quite frankly, vibrant and beautiful state. And we know from research that if we can get people to Iowa, they're more likely to stay and to put down roots. I hear these stories all the time. In fact, I am one of those people. Francisco Hernandez of Newton grew up in Mexico, arrived in Iowa at the age of 20. Knowing no one, and barely able to speak English, he focused on work and going to church. A local couple from the church took him under their wings and gave him the confidence to succeed in anything he set his mind to do. Today, he has a master's degree and a great job at Vermeer Manufacturing. Francisco loves to travel and has been places like Thailand and India and Europe, but he still chooses to call Iowa home. He gives this advice to anyone considering a move to Iowa. Just take the leap of faith like I did. I couldn't have fallen into a better place than Iowa. I want to leave you with this. I think the greatest thing about envisioning Iowa is that we're doing it together. Psychologist Abraham Maslow said, in any given moment, we have two options. We can either step forward into growth, or we can step back into safety. I want to thank all of you for choosing to step forward into growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. The work, of course, that IEDA is doing and has been doing is so important for positioning the state for growth, and it's seen the past decade in for the future. And that's the thing, economic development is a never-ending effort to consistently be both reacting and more importantly, proactively identifying the threats and opportunities. IEDA's partnership on this initiative, and I think I'm not probably speaking out of line here, Debbie, you want to know about the challenges that businesses are experiencing and the things that are happening in the state and the solutions that we could be working on. That's why we're doing this. We're trying to bubble forward those topics. So you heard about one of the reasons we positioned Debbie at the beginning of the program is we wanted you to hear about the things that she is working on as a state. But we also know that, as she alluded to, that's not it's not going to be just Debbie and IEDA that are going to make the changes that are happening. It's got to be the businesses and the communities and the whole cycle of everybody working together. I often say at BPC that our organization is not just a media company, but also an economic development organization. We use news and information to help inform businesses and community leaders about the challenges we face so we can all collectively work on those challenges. And that's why I'm so excited to dive into the data that we've got today and have Covey really get into that. We're going to talk about the good things. We're going to talk about some of the things that are challenges that the state is going to be facing going forward. And that's what the program is designed to do today. So, introducing Covey here, as we were preparing for Envision Iowa this year, we began talking about how there's so much economic data, so many different perspectives. Wouldn't it be nice to have a more clear picture on what we all are facing? What do people think across the state, not just within our bubbles of the folks that we talk to, but all across the state? We began working with our partners at Baton Global and together put together a survey with the goal of using data to help illuminate the aggregated outlook for the future of Iowa, with an objective of supporting businesses and organizations in making commercial, investment, and public policy decisions that positively impact Iowa's long-term economic performance. The survey focused on the three critical themes that we've covered in our think tanks: people and culture, business opportunities, and infrastructure. And within each of those themes, the survey asked questions on 4 sub-themes that capture the most pressing issues on Iowa's economic performance agenda. In total, the survey has 12 questions that were analyzed by Baton Global and compared against underlying key performance indicators commonly used by Iowa leaders to measure our performance against the immediate states in our region and nationally. The one thing I can assure you tonight is there's way more in the report that we're going to be able to get into tonight. This is going to be the summary version of what's in there. Our intention is to be using that report to help plant seeds and have continued dialogue and discussions within each of those areas. Each one of the questions opens up a variety of things. Each one has a data point in it that is going to make for another story that our team is going to keep digging into. So our intention is to use some of this to foster future discussion as well. In this week's business record that everybody has on the table, if you flip right to the middle, you'll find a summary report. A lot of what's in there is stuff you're going to hear tonight. But there's also a little QR code on the very first page of it. You can download the full report at that location. It's about 30 pages long, so you probably won't be able to quite finish that tonight while you're in the audience. We're going to give you kind of a Reader's Digest tonight and also dive into some of those key findings. So, to help guide you through the report, I'm going to formally introduce Covey Chawla, the architect of the report. Covey is going to serve as your tour guide today. He's going to shepherd us through some of the key high-level findings, and he's going to give 2 separate mini keynotes on the data. And then interspersed between him walking us through that, we're going to moderate a little panel discussion with our panelists today. They were all part of our think tanks, and we're going to have them just be reacting a little bit to the data. Those 3 speakers tonight are for you are Billy Hunt. She's the Executive Director of America's Cultivation Corridor. We have Amal Barr. She's the Vice President of Planning and Strategy at Oak Ridge Neighborhood. And Yvette Craven, Senior Manager of Talent, Inclusion, and Diversity at Trans America. Can we give them each a big round of applause? All right. Without further ado, please welcome Covey Chawla, Baton, a partner at Baton Global.
Good afternoon. As Chris said, my job over the next few minutes is to serve as your tour guide. I have had some tour guide experience as a Girl Scout. Yes, a Girl Scout. I'm in Sioux City, Sioux-Land Girl Scouts. I used to give parents tours at the camp so they could leave their kids. So I have some experience as a Girl Scout. But as Chris said, we're going to really look at some of the key findings from the data. Now, those are summarized in the business record that was shared and is on your tables. And again, the 30-page report you probably can get through tonight. I'd recommend a nice glass of whiskey or a red wine. It's wonderful reading. And again, we are really excited about the opportunity to bring more research to support you as business leaders, you as cultural and community leaders, and you as public policy makers, and most importantly, you as Iowans, to make the right choices for the future of our state. So with that, we're going to start digging into the data. When we first looked at the data, the first thing that struck me was the opening line from Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities. Now, granted, it's overused, but as we talk through the data today, we'll see that it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. In many ways reflects a dichotomy that we see in the data. As they mentioned, the first thing we focused on was business opportunity. When we look at the business opportunity data, there's a tremendous amount of optimism amongst the state, regardless of industry, regardless of geography, regardless of demographic. Again, there's a tremendous amount of optimism. Again, I think there were 66% of people were favorable when it came to thinking about the innovation ecosystem here in Iowa. And again, across the industries, in particular, we looked at manufacturing and logistics, we looked at finance, we looked at technology, and a couple of the other key industry drivers of our economy. Again, a very, very high level of optimism in our business fundamentals, right? So again, very hopeful story there. That being said, though, as I said, there also were some key areas of concern. And so that dichotomy for leaders poses us with the question, even if we have strong industries and healthy business fundamentals, how do we achieve a robust economy and positive business results in the future without the workforce and population base to produce those consumer goods and services? Right? Again, when we start to look more deeply in the data, and we'll be diving into those results and having a panel discussion about those throughout the next 40 minutes, give or take. When we look at some of that data, there's a tremendous amount of disconnect, again, between that economic optimism, but then we look at some of those social infrastructure issues that Rory mentioned, right? When we look at housing, look at education, when we look at healthcare, when we look at childcare, there is not a high level of optimism. There's actually a high level of desire and concern about the need for change to continue to enable a thriving Iowa. We see the same thing when we look at population and workforce in particular. In particular, again, we see that across particular industries. Manufacturing, again, I believe only 37% of manufacturers believe they'll be able to meet their workforce needs going forward. And that's concerning. And again, some of that data is validated by some of the reports that IDC puts out and even ABI, their recent manufacturing report. So again, that Tale of Two Cities is a very real point of bifurcation in the data. But first, we're going to turn to now to our more positive story, and that of the high level of business optimism that we see. So with that, perfect. So our first key finding from the survey, which again, you can see in the business record, is leaders are broadly optimistic about Iowa's business opportunities and fundamentals. As I mentioned earlier, we looked at 4 key areas of economic activity: innovation, entrepreneurship, performance of some of our key industries, again, agriculture, financial services, insurance, manufacturing, and technology. And then the 4th one that we looked at was public-private partnerships. And across geography and across industry, 66% of Iowa leaders expect Iowa's current innovation-focused strategies and practices will be successful in driving innovation across our state. That's wonderful, and it's a key testament to the investments that have been made in innovation across our industry. 58% of Iowa leaders are also optimistic in their expectations that the current strategies and practices will lead to improvements in Iowa's entrepreneurship ecosystem. Again, job growth is driven by the creation of new businesses. When we look across our key industries, 72% of those leaders in the insurance industry are optimistic that their industry will continue to grow across 2023. 70% of those leaders in the financial services industry are optimistic that their industry will grow in 2023. And when we turn to agriculture, 60% of leaders across Iowa expect the agricultural industry in Iowa to continue to thrive when we look at 2023. So in short, there is a tremendous amount of optimism when we look across Iowa's economy. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Chris for the panel, and then we'll turn to the other side of the equation.
Give somebody a round of applause.
All right, thank you for the initial findings there. I want to turn to our panel now. And before we do, I want to give them a little bit of cover today. So we are not asking them to try to answer for the entirety of this report, right? This will be more important, of course, when we get into some of the challenges that we're facing. We're really looking to use this group because they've been so intimately involved in think tanks to get their initial feedbacks, their initial thoughts on what they're hearing, so that we're getting kind of a little bit of a live response to that. So again, they got a little bit of a sneak peek at the data, but they had not heard Covey's presentation, so they're really here today to help us digest. So with that, our goal is to have this kind of be a little bit of a roadmap to help identify some of the things that we're going to be continuing to talk about in the future. And we're going to start all the way down with Amal to begin with. So Amal, if you could talk, just what I'm going to ask each of the panelists to do is give just kind of an initial response, an initial reflection upon what you've heard so far. And go ahead and pull that mic nice and close.
I think as a child of Iowa, it's hard not to believe in the optimism that our community.
I think, let's see if actually it might need to be turned on. Let's give it a shot. That sounds great. There we go.
Thank you.
Now you've got some power. So.
As a child of Iowa, it's not difficult not to believe in the optimism that our community feels as it relates to where we're headed and how well we can do going into the future. I think one of the key ingredients to our success as a community is how relatively small we are, and that relatively smallness of our community makes us very hyper-connected. And that connectivity allows us a ton of room to act on the opportunities that we have, that we can cultivate as a collective to tackle the challenges that our communities experience across the state. So the optimism is very real, and I feel it, and I know it's there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. I would share some of the same thoughts. I have a lot of questions after reading this. More questions and reflections come to mind as we continue discussing this. I'm also an Iowa native, and so there's a lot of things that Iowa offers, a lot of great benefits. My husband's an Iowa native, and therefore our kids are growing up here. And so there's just so much that Iowa has to offer, so many benefits. And how do we, I guess the question or my reaction to this is, how do we ensure that optimism is contagious? How do we, there's a lot of ways that we can extend that optimism beyond this room, even beyond the state. How do we do that so that people are intrigued at what Iowa has to offer and therefore want to come and want to stay? And then I'll just say, as a part of that is making sure that optimism is extended to a diverse array of people. That we have strong representation in terms of diversity as well. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. Bill.
Okay, I think you have a trifecta here of 3 Iowa natives. And I think it's interesting that the IA magazine is GOAT's greatest of all time, right? And it's Iowa. So some of the optimism, I'm saying like, GOAT, why haven't we made that the state animal and do it for all the other states? Because teenagers and the new generation would love that. And as a farm girl, that is a GOAT. There was no question in my mind when I looked at that. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. A little bit, as I looked at the data, of course, I wear the lens of agriculture and innovation. And I saw the 60% believe in the optimism growth in the ag industry. And honestly, I was like almost jumping up and down when I saw that. Because if any of you spend time in rural communities, a farmer thinking anything's over 25% optimistic is huge. So I think that is pretty relevant to our industry. So I took that like, hey, we're good. So I think there are some exciting pieces to that when we look at the innovation ecosystem. and the belief, the desire of success in the ecosystem. I spent 20 years of my professional career in corporate America. I thought we were the only ones that innovated until I stepped out into this role of the corridor. And innovation across the state is at a fever pitch, and especially in the food and ag industry, because we understand our global leadership role in that. And you cannot go far without seeing innovators in the industry. More important, innovators that are really trying to step up and address some of these global trends that we see. So I see it as a fever pitch. I was excited for the 60% because when I go back to my hometown, it might be 25%. And in the statements, I think that you see, it says the optimism is everyone believes we are a fertile state for business and for growth. And so I hope everyone sees that, because I really do believe in that. We believe in ourselves. We just kind of need to start picking each other up and telling the story. So we are the best of times, the worst of times. Sometimes I think as we come out of COVID, we don't know which mask to put on. Is it the buckle down and work hard? Is it the celebratory mask? And sometimes we forget which one we have on. And I think just being understanding and tolerant of where everyone's coming from right now, this is a really solid report, I think, on the optimism in the state.
Really, we were talking really quick before, and so I'm going to put you a little bit in the spot, but you talked about, and only because you said you were going to carry this whole program, I think is what you said. So,
I did not say that.
what we were talking about, though, is the difference you see in talking about innovation in rural versus urban communities. And I wonder if you could just talk about that a little bit, because I think it'll help us lead into some of the things that we're going to talk about a little bit in the future.
So I've been having kind of some monthly conversations with some people about innovation across the state of Iowa. And I think in more urban areas, we see innovation as this must be huge celebratory thing. And as we look at all of our communities, sometimes innovation doesn't have to be huge to be truly dynamic and changing in their sector of the industry or their sector of the state. And so lifting up all innovation, and again, my hometown of 250 people in Iowa probably is going to define innovation much differently than the community I've lived in, the Des Moines area, for the last 30 years. And that's part of this diversity and inclusion, is how do we pull those different thoughts into it? Because if they do 10% better, we do 10% better, the state does 10% better, we're gonna have some great outcomes.
Well, I think even if when you think about a big business versus small business, when we're talking about innovation, similar in nature, right? Debbie, how about your response?
Well, I agree with Billy. You should frame that 60% for the ag industry, because that was like, wow, that is phenomenal. You know, honestly, this doesn't surprise me. I'm out all the day. I mean, even though, listen, people will tell you there is a great deal of uncertainty out there, right? So it's not all calm and smooth sailing, and we do have some challenges before us. But overall, we're very optimistic that we can rise to the occasion, right? The one area, though, that we have to talk about innovation more in, and that's government, quite frankly. So we actually do entrepreneur operating systems at IFA and IEDA. And one of our value propositions is innovation. People walk in and say, innovation. And I said, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, government has to be, in order to deal with the challenges today, we have to deliver services different. And so we really are reevaluating everything we do. So when we talk about this need for affordable housing, right? I mean, we have too many people that are overburdened. You know, if you're paying more than 30% of your income from housing, that's a problem. And Iowa has too many people that fall into that category. And again, we need 61,000 units. And that's everything from supportive housing, from homeless, all the way. I mean, it's across the continuum. So one of the things we challenged ourselves, and you know this very well, right? We have this thing called QAP. It's kind of the weeds, so just bear with me. The point was, it's about this thing. And I finally challenged the team to say, what is our mission? Our mission is to provide quality, affordable housing for Iowans, regardless of where they are in their, you know, on their life's journey. And I said, how does this actually get us there? And the answer was, it doesn't, right? Because it's really very, very bureaucratic. And so we are leaning things down and really trying to figure out, how do we, again, get more units? So I think government has to be part. We have to challenge ourselves in government, whether it's education or whatever agency it is, to truly be more innovative, because it's going to take us being innovative on our side in order to help meet some of these challenges that we're going to be talking about.
Thank you, Debbie. Cubby, I'm curious, you've heard the responses here from the group. I'm sure when you're looking at the data, every time you're seeing these optimism numbers, you're going, well, I wish we could ask even more questions, right? Let's dig into that. So that your point about going, how do we make sure that the optimism is universal rather than pocketed in certain areas? So I'm curious from a data perspective, what maybe you could glean from that, and that'll kick us off as we go back down the line I'll ask the panel then from that point, what other questions does this raise for you at this point? So,
Yeah, I think from an optimistic perspective and from a data perspective, what would be very helpful is, again, I think Lily kind of hit the nail on the head when she talked about there's a difference in how somebody in a town of 250 people in rural Iowa conceptualizes and applies innovation versus somebody working for a tech startup based here in Moines, right? And again, from a business investment and public policy perspective, understanding the nuances in depth of those differences are required to inform policy-making, investment, and business decision-making and placement. Because otherwise, we're making decisions in aggregate that may benefit some portions of the state, may not benefit other portions of the state. And I think there's one thing we've learned about Iowa is we need to have thriving rural communities and thriving urban centers. If either of those is out of balance, the state in the long term will not thrive. So from a data perspective, I think that's the next step, is starting to unpack those nuances based on some of those different sort of public policy cuts.
Well, I think you hit on something perfect there, which is the nuance of the data as we look at it. Here, for everybody, as you look through the report, I want to caution, I will do that for you as well, that you want to use those data points. They're good to use, but always go about what if, right? About what? Because there's going to be so many questions that each of those data points are going to unpack and need to be unpacked as we go through this. So, Debbie, what other questions does it raise for you?
You know, I think I'm good on this section. I think we're ready to move on. Let's get to the meaty stuff, all right? I mean, we all agree.
Bill, how about you?
Well, I don't have much to add because I'm kicking myself. I should have talked to you before, because my question was, how do we define innovation? How do we connect? How do we help people feel relevant in the conversation? So, word of advice, don't talk to Chris before you're on the stand.
I guess the thought that I have is optimism doesn't necessarily produce action. And how do we turn passion into progress? I think passion is great, optimism is great, and that's why we're having this conversation. How do we produce what we want to see? How do we come together and make the state better?
It was noted earlier that as Iowans, we do really well moving forward or stepping into the future. My question is, how do we do that together? And how do we do that successfully together, bringing everyone along the way as we experience growth and innovation and change?
All right. Well, we're going to bring Covey back up now. We're going to dig into some of the challenges and some of the key findings that we found in that aspect of the report. Please welcome back. Let's give him another round of applause.
Thanks to the panel. I think to Amal and Yvette's questions of, again, how do we turn passion into action and how do we move forward together? I don't have the answers, but again, I think today is part of the first step in that journey. By, again, the business publications corporation bringing everyone together and us starting to share and disseminate this data. So we've had some great discussion around the optimism, but again, we don't make progress without addressing those issues that concern us as a state, as individuals, as Iowans. So with that, we're going to turn to the second key finding from the research around social infrastructure. And when we look at social infrastructure, as you can see in the data, there are some significant concerns across all Iowans when it comes to our social infrastructure. Again, in Debbie's opening remarks, she talked about housing. In Murray's remarks, we've heard about healthcare. And again, from the panel, we've heard about the need and concerns around education, childcare, with again, housing and childcare being at the top of the list. And just as we think about economic development, Just as a truck is perhaps the mechanism through which to distribute goods and services and unlock that economic potential of a community, social infrastructure is that supporting infrastructure that again unlocks the economic and social power of a community. So we really need to address it when we look at the data. So in Iowa, for every 100 extremely low-income renter households needing affordable housing, there are only 42 affordable available rentals. When it comes to childcare, according to the most recent data from the Bipartisan Policy Center, only 15% of Iowans do not have access to adequate childcare. And again, when we look at the data from the survey, regardless again of geography, of industry, of whether it's a public, private, or social sector leader, 62% of leaders across Iowa expect that improving Iowa's social infrastructure in 2023 will require us to change our current strategies and practices. Again, that's a very high number, level of concern across the state. So again, that's where the panel, I'm hoping, will start to dive more deeply into how do we start to move forward on that. And again, you can see in the whole report some of the broader cuts across that data. Now we're going to move on to the third finding, which is around, unsurprisingly, workforce. Right? So when we look at workforce, 67% of Iowa leaders expect that meeting Iowa's workforce needs in 2023 will require changes to Iowa's current workforce strategies and practices. Again, very high number. What's even more concerning when we look at the data is an additional 20% of leaders expect that Iowa will be unable to meet its workforce needs, regardless of if we invest in changing them, irrespective, again, of those workplace strategies and practices. Again, almost a fifth of Iowa leaders are very, very pessimistic when it comes to our workforce. That has, again, huge implications for business owners as they think about where and how they want to invest and grow their business. And again, huge implications for public policy as we think about how do we grow our workforce or at least replace workforce and invest in strategies around automation and other ways to continue to grow our economy. So again, that was one of the key ones. When we look at manufacturing in particular, 57.7% of manufacturers say that we need changes in our current workforce practices and strategies if they're going to be able to meet their workforce needs for 2020. Again, 57.7%, a huge engine, economic engine for Iowa. So again, workforce is a key area of concern. And then very closely correlated to workforce, we're going to turn to population, our fourth key area of finding. Only 37% of leaders in Iowa expect that the state's population will grow in 2023 under current growth strategies and practices. Again, rather pessimistic when we look at outlook at population. Significant need for change. But another area when we looked at population that was quite surprising is in the area of DEI. And again, here, DEI data communicates a significant dichotomy, again, between our urban and rural population. A majority of rural Iowan leaders, and again, these are leaders based, self-selected in rural communities, a majority of rural-based Iowa leaders expect that Iowa's performance on DEI issues in 2023 will improve under existing DEI strategies and practices. When we look at urban and suburban areas, a majority of urban and suburban-based Iowa leaders expect that improving Iowa's performance on DEI issues in 2023 will require changes to Iowa's strategies and practices. Again, and I think that dichotomy, again, continues to underscore the need of how do we, again, we're all Iowans, yet there is a split in certain key issues amongst our population. How do we start to move forward together by closing some of these gaps? So as we look forward and as we turn to the panel, when we look forward from this data, as we said, we don't know what the next steps are now. But our purpose and kind of the call to action is around creating new approaches and starting to demand a change when it comes to how we as leaders act, but also demand change in how we work together across business, community, cultural leaders, and public policy. And then we need new ways to develop and communicate how do we enhance and drive our workforce and population. And then finally, how do we target some of those strategies towards addressing those key industries that are driving the economy forward. And with that, I will turn it back over to Chris for the next panel.
That's a lot of cash here.
Do you have my script? Do you have my script, Debbie?
Yeah, wow.
That's my next line. So that's a lot to unpack. We don't have nearly enough time to do so. So, panelists, like last time, let's go ahead and start to try to do that. We're just, again, we're going to begin this again. We're not asking them to respond to the entirety of the report, but Amal will have you go ahead and go first.
It is not my birthday today. It's a few months away, but I will go ahead and make public my birthday wish. And that wish is for Iowa to have an affordable housing preservation strategy. Our community, with respect to housing, compared to other communities across the U.S., it might be seen as a relatively small issue. But to me and to many people in the affordable housing space and the housing space in general, it's a very big problem. Just in July of this year, we had an out-of-state investment firm purchase a large multifamily housing community located on Grand Avenue in Des Moines. And just within weeks of making that purchase and that ownership being transferred from the existing owner to the new owner, the tenants received a rent increase notice of $150 and more, depending on what unit they lived in. And I can safely assume that for most of us in this room, an increase of $150 or even $200 to our mortgages, to our monthly rents, isn't a big deal. It might be, an annoying thing to happen. But a good chunk of our neighbors, our family members, our friends, our colleagues, that's a huge burden that they cannot afford. And that is happening again and again and again in our community. I pay attention to what's happening in Des Moines, as that's my backyard. Last year, 530 units of affordable housing, existing units of affordable housing were lost in our community. That's over 500 households in our city, in the city of Des Moines, that were displaced because they could no longer afford to live in the neighborhoods that they called home. That, to me, is a crisis, and I hope that my birthday wish comes true. Whether that happens or not, I think it depends on us as a collective.
We had a panel of some commercial real estate folks just recently this week talking about this topic. The news is not good in that space, right? The interest rates going up and the ability to buy homes, that's just going to continue to apply additional pressure to rent across the board when it comes to affordable housing. And quite frankly, the panel said that burden is going to be felt by the folks that are most in need of the affordable housing. So, Yvette, your takeaways from what you heard today.
My first reaction is, dang! That's right. It's like, oh my gosh, there's so much in here, like you said, to unpack. The other thought I have is, I think how you said, surprisingly there's disconnects that exist between rural and urban in terms of the perspectives around DE&I and where we can have impacts. My thought and reaction to that is, it's not surprising to everyone. I think for some, that might be a surprise, but I think for those of us who didn't grow up in a rural community in Iowa, or that live in more the urban areas, would recognize that there's great opportunity, and that is kind of what we would expect to see. And I think one of the reasons why is because of just exposure, what you're exposed to in terms of, interactions with individuals that are diverse and have different perspectives, come from different backgrounds, different cities, different races and ethnicities, different religions. I mean, all of those things, when you are in a more urban area in our state, you're going to get more access and exposure to those individuals, and therefore the perspective and experience will also be different. So I think that's one thing that comes to mind. To be quite frank, there's a lot of also personal stories that come to mind about my experience living in Iowa and growing up in Iowa, and a lot of them are not positive around diversity and inclusion. Stories around my experience as a Black woman in this state, and my experience being married to an African-American male and his experience in this state. And so that really resonates with me, that there's great opportunity for us here. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention. The other is, have we really stopped and taken inventory of what we offer here in this state and who the prime audience is for those offerings? Because that's how we make change, to invite and engage and attract folks who look different from us, diverse folks, to come to this state requires us to offer things that are relevant to them, to allow and create a space and a state to better retain persons of different ethnicities and religious backgrounds and so forth. We have to make sure we're offering things to them that are culturally relevant to them. Personal experience, I have to drive an hour to have someone retie my locks. I have to drive an hour. And maybe in Houston or Chicago, an hour wouldn't be a big deal. But those are very important cultural elements to diverse communities. And so how do we create a state that not only says we think that we want to do more around diversity, but that optimism, that excitement, that passion turns into very real action and intentionality by using our influence to create the state that is welcoming and inclusive to everyone. And so those are some of the things, and I can go on and on and on. So that's, again, have we really taken a step back? Early in my career, I'll just say this very, very briefly. I started in talent acquisition, and it was very interesting recruiting diverse talent to the state. In fact, one of my focuses was on diversity and inclusion as it pertains to talent acquisition. And I remember several conversations with potential talent coming from other states. First of all, they're like, Iowa, Idaho, Ohio, where am I going? And what is that, right? And then they come for their visit, and I made a very intentional, I worked very intentionally to make sure they felt very welcomed and belonged here if they decided to come and move here. But oftentimes the questions that they have is, where can I get my hair done? What faith-based churches and organizations, synagogues, what is that, what's available to me that is culturally relevant to me? Where can I find food that I'm used to having at my leisure and easy access to that's relevant to my culture? And also, where's the beauty supply store? I mean, those are things that are very, very important. Growing up here, I've always been used to looking under a rock to find those things. But if you're from Memphis, or you're from Louisiana, if you're from wherever, Biloxi, Mississippi, and you're coming here, that's not what you're used to. And so how do we create that experience for, again, how do we make sure that we are really taking a step back and taking inventory of what we have to offer as a state, the incentives that we have, the events, culture, arts, all of the things that really make our quality of life meaningful, and take that inventory and understand, are we offering those things to a diverse array of people? And now I'm going to step off my soapbox.
Before we go to Billy, Covey, I'm curious, as you looked through, you mentioned the dichotomy of rural urban, we also broke it down by suburban. I wonder if that stood out in some other of the questions that you looked at as well, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Again, the suburban, urban, rural differences were most pronounced in issues related to population. Like, again, when we looked at, again, I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but when we looked at the business optimism, again, there was by and large a lot of consistency. I think the other areas where we had some dichotomy were, again, within the infrastructure theme in general, but also when it came to physical infrastructure. Like, it was quite a bit of dichotomy there in terms of, we looked at rail, road, barge, and air transportation. And that was another area when it came to that level of infrastructure. Beyond that, again, the urban-rural dichotomy wasn't as present.
Great. Bill?
Okay, I'm going to take, because you put 3 things in one question to answer. So I agree with everything they're saying about D and I and what we need to do for inclusion. But as I put all 3 of those together, the first thing I think is, oh my, we have to sustain our current workforce. We can't lose anyone that isn't aging out of our workforce. We have to keep them here. And then when you look at the concerns of housing, healthcare, child care, education, my mind went directly to mental health. Because if our employees aren't strong mentally, all these other things just allow for that production to slow. I think there's a huge mental health piece out there, and if all Iowans would just check in with their coworker, their neighbors, and make sure they're okay, that could really just be a good starting point for us. When we think about the education catch-up we need to do with our K-12 system because of COVID, the stress that puts on that child, then that puts on that teacher, that puts on the parents, that puts on the administrator, that puts on our daycares, our childcare, this all comes together. And we can try to say there are other issues related to that, but as a parent myself, and looking at ACT scores from last year to this year, listening, because I get to spend a lot of time at Iowa State, I think I'm fortunate in that, listening to the students that are coming into Iowa State. Drake has mentioned it, community colleges have mentioned it. They are trying to help these students get caught up as they enter our higher education. All of those eventually enter our workforce. And so if mom and dad aren't happy, they're not productive at work. If mom and dad are drained because they can't find consistent childcare, consistent housing, inflation impacts their budget, that all comes down mentally. So that undercurrent, I think if we can all do more to help others and let them know it's okay to have a bad day, that's just something that weaves through all of it. So when you put them all 3 together, we got to keep our workforce that's here strong as we recruit others in.
Debbie, how about you?
Well, okay, so let me kind of do these in order. So first of all, it's not surprising daycare got picked up. 33% of our daycare is closed in the last 5 years, right? So that's a huge infrastructure problem. However, I do believe with the amount of money that we've invested, not only in new infrastructure, but actually bending the cost curve for these centers, I do believe in 3 to 4 years from now, you're going to see that begin to change, right? So yes, it's right now still an issue, but I feel confident in the policies that are in place. It's just going to need time to play out. The same thing on even the reemployment division of IWD. That's only a 90-day issue. I mean, we've got everything consolidated. We've got the right people on the team. It's going to take time to get that going. But again, I think we're making the right investments and the right delivery. It's still concerning, though, that we had a 70.4% labor participation pre-COVID. We're not near there. We're still about 68. Men, 24 to 35, they're sitting on the sidelines. Now, what is that about, right? And then women, 45 to 54, extremely interesting age group, right? So you see people that are still, they're not taking unemployment, they're just not participating. That's a problem because we need, because we have more jobs than people, we need everybody participating who can, right? So, but I feel confident, again, in the strategies that's just going to take time to work out on at least the way we deliver services and training and all of that.
Debbie, do you know any of the theories around the women in the 45 to 50?
No, I cannot figure this out. I don't know. Well, first of all, someone said, are they all starting Etsy businesses? Well, no, because I thought that because look at the Etsy list. But the reality is no, because the 1099s aren't, it's not equating. The other thing, I don't know. I don't know if it's grandmothers or that is taking out to help with the child care needs with their children, and then we have aging parents on the other end. We really don't know, but it is somewhat perplexing. The men, though, I think is the most alarming, right? Now, the Wall Street Journal, what they say, that they're all in there living back in their parents' basements. I don't know if that's true, but we need to fix that, because there's good jobs out there, and again, more jobs than people. I think that's going to work itself out. This preservation, though, of housing is a real problem. You are absolutely correct, and it is one that we struggle with. And I'm going to tell you, it's why I'm a building hugger, right? I believe in adaptive reuse because I think it's easier to do these projects. And I believe that we're going to have to apply technology in construction. It's why we developed a partnership with Iowa State School of Design and Engineering. We can 3D print anything, right? We can do multiple family. We can do single family. If you don't want it to look like a concrete bunker, you can make them look different, right? But we have to bring technology to bend the cost curve. But let me also tell you about some of our city's ordinances and our federal ordinances. So, we worked with Melissa here on what I thought was an incredible program. I put a lot of money into it to do these containers, right, for people for supportive housing. It's a great use of a container. My son's an architect. What he could do with a container, I'm telling you, is nice. By the time HUD got done with us, right, because it's next to the railroad. Now, again, I live downtown when I'm in Des Moines. I am next to the railroad. Scott, you need a quiet zone, I'm telling you. But the point is that the thing is, we all have road. I can hear them in my apartment, right? Because of the railroad, we had to build this thing out to a level you couldn't even move in the container because we had to insulate it so much. That's insanity. Right? We have to change it. We have to get rid of the word affordable. It is about housing for all, right? Let me say this. The people that these are affordable are the people that kept our economy going when the rest of us could hunker down in our basements did so, right? And it angers me. It absolutely angers me that I believe everyone, this is pharmacy techs and, our waitresses, our food service, anyone that works in our community should be, it's a moral imperative to me that they should be able to live in the community with dignity in which they work. We do need to fix this. And we also need more resources. So, with that said, but you're right, and we need to figure that out. The biggest problem Iowa has, and you've heard me say this, we have a population problem, right? Pure and simple. We have slow population growth. We have an aging population. You have a national statistic that says 10,000 baby boomers a day are exiting our workforce across all platforms, right? We had 4.7% growth. It's still better than most of our neighbors. Not good enough, right? It's there now. All right. The point is, the growth we did have is 44% with immigration. 60% is non-white. We are scheduled by the year 2030, if not sooner, to have our first rural county that the minority will be the majority population, right? So, but Iowa, when I go out to these communities, I don't really see a diverse table around leadership, right? We have to, and I call them out on it. It's like, okay, did you know, let me tell you your demographics. So when have you reached out to these different populations? And so those are things we do have to work on. But that is where our growth is going to come from. We have to grow, and that's why we're also repositioning us in the national marketplace to really raise the brand. So yeah, population is our biggest issue right now. And then again, I would be remiss if I don't say this, because I say it every time. Those of you in the room who can birth more babies need to do that. I tell that to my children. I tell that to my children every day. My daughter took me up on that. She has a 6-month-old, and she called and told me that Oliver will have a baby brother before he turns 1. So there you go. I'm not sure that's a great thing to do. I think I covered it all.
We were joking beforehand. We were talking to somebody who's retiring and he's giving us kind of his unfiltered take on some things. And somebody joked and said we should call it business record unfiltered. And you might want to have it on this.
Well, that's all the entire table of communication people there saying she meant to say. She should not have said that.
All right, so we've got about 5 minutes or so here, and so what I want to do is go back down the line. Ma, I'd love to have you start us off again, and any questions that you'd like to learn more about, and then wrap us up also there with perhaps something that you have some optimism around as well, so we'll make sure we're kind of bringing ourselves back to that spot too.
I'm interested in knowing what it is that we don't know right? And how do we understand what those things are in order to be able to strategize around working solutions, right? Two things I will say that I don't know enough about, even though I'm in housing. I work for an organization that provides early childhood programming. The affordable housing stock that we have across the state, do we have a list of that is accessible to all of us, right?
We do.
And when do those affordability contracts expire? And how do we get ahead of that to ensure that those individuals living in those homes don't become displaced over the course of that period coming to a closing? And then number two is we've heard about the loss of early childhood care centers. I'm getting a lot of echo in here. Over the last 5 years or so, do we know where that loss has taken place, the physical addresses of those locations? And how do we reconnect with those people that have become out of business, have gone out of business? And note to optimism is, I think we have a very low degree of separation in our community, and I think it's about time that we take advantage of that.
Thank you.
I have lots and lots of questions. I think I have about 2 pages worth of questions, but some things that come to mind, what are some of our strategic partnerships that we have in advancing all of the things that we talked about today? There are a lot of organizations in our communities that can help us move things forward.
You might have to go a cappella for the last 5 minutes. Use your big voice.
Oh, I can use what I call my preacher voice. I can do that. So those are the questions that I have. What are our strategic partnerships that we have and that exist, and what are those gaps maybe we need to identify additional strategic partners to make sure that we're moving things forward as a state. The other thing that I was curious to understand is, are we going into the communities that are impacted the most by the things that are occurring in our state? Are we having focus group conversations beyond the leaders in this room? Are we talking to the people that are impacted by changes in housing or that are having struggles there? And are we doing it from a place of making assumptions? Are we doing it to truly listen and hear what their challenges are and how we can continue to support them, or what we can do to support them? Do we have the right people in the room? I think that's kind of along the same lines. I think, to your point, Debbie, there's a lack of diversity in leadership, and a lot of our organizations, if you look around the room today, there's not a whole lot of ethnic and racial diversity, and diversity absolutely extends beyond that, but let's also be real, that's a very important part of it as well. And so I think there's just, I could go on and on and on. There's a lot of questions that I have. I think that we definitely have to continue this conversation because we cannot address all of these in one event like this, but certainly willing to continue the dialogue if you'll have me again. But yeah, those are thoughts I have.
Thank you. All right, Bill.
So my question is, what are each of us going to do? So we all came here tonight, probably had an interest area, because we'd probably rather be home with friends, family, working out, but we chose to be here. So which one of these topics are you going to spend time on to make a difference? Because if you come and you go home and you do nothing, you probably could have found better value for your time tonight. Sorry, business record, you put on great events, but you came for a reason, you came because you had a purpose. So what are you going to do with that purpose? Because if we all go home and do nothing, we'll be back here next year having the same conversation. So my question is, what are you going to do? Because as I was going through the notes last night, I wrote down, here's something I can do. Here's something I can do, and I can do with my husband, and we'd have purpose. And as we're getting ready to be empty nesters, we might realize what we like about each other again. You know, we can come together. So that was my thought. In addition, I am a strong believer that fellowship and ideas happen at the table. So we can post all we want on social media about what we learned tonight. We can, you know, do all of that, but if we don't sit down and have conversations like today, Debbie wouldn't have taken the note about the historic housing preservation piece. She probably wouldn't have seen that on Twitter. So let's all also find time for fellowship and get together, because even those with the most politically disparate personalities can usually find things in common.
Thank you, Lily.
All right, everyone, kind of timer.
I know, it's just one thing.
Yep.
So, for those of you who don't know me, I am a person of great faith, and I pray every day, and my prayer is for eyes to see the needs around me and the grace to make a difference. And that is my challenge every day, and I do that with the great people here in the front row. So thank you.
One final thought from you as well?
I'm just excited about the energy and commitment here, and to Billy's point though, yeah, it requires all of us to take action.
Thank you, Cubby. Thank you for the work on the survey. Again, you can take the business record with you tonight. You can download the full report. I think Joe said maybe, I think Joe maybe said have a glass of wine or some whiskey, but you might need one or two for those. So, I'm going to bring up Susanna here to wrap us up tonight. Please give a big round of applause to our panelists.
We're in the home stretch, so we'll have you out of here in just a minute, but I want to thank all of you so much for coming. This has been a fantastic dialogue. Of course, you know that we talk about things in our products all the time. So I want to invite you to be a member or a subscriber of the Business Record, of DSM or IA Magazine, all of the underlying products that we have. You can do that at businessrecord.com/signup or on dsmmagazine.com, or of course you can catch one of us on the way out. Of course, I want to thank IEDA, the Iowa Business Council, the Des Moines Airport Authority, and the Iowa Credit Union League, along with all of our corporate sponsors for making this event possible, and to all of you who attended today. But what I want to leave you with today is that we know that there are many people working in Iowa very diligently on programs, on initiatives, on innovations to help Iowa thrive and grow. But what we heard today is while there is business optimism, oddly, for those of us who grew up hearing about Iowa Nice, there's people pessimism. There's pessimism about our ability to grow and the ability to take care of the people who we live near to. In order for us to improve child care, to improve housing, education, or transportation for everyone, not just for a few, it's going to take all of us working together. Iowa Nice has to be real. We have to turbocharge it. It isn't just going to be a tale of two cities, to get back to Dickens. It has to be a tale of not just the haves and the have-nots, but of access for everyone to a quality life and employment, so that our economy, which we feel great about, can continue to thrive and grow. So we need to build on and we need to support the work that is happening, to talk to each other and share the work that's happening, to create new strategies, and to align on common goals and common action to move Iowa forward. It is my belief, and I think what I heard today, is through partnership, we can be stronger together. So we're going to be taking this information, we're going to look at how we can take it forward in 2023. Clearly, there's more questions to ask. Our goal is to take Envision Iowa forward so that we can envision Iowa and see Iowa as a thriving state and move that vision to action and to reality. So stay tuned for more. Envision Iowa will continue, and we thank you very much for being a part of the event today. Thank you.